to talk about Graham Potter, and some will say, oh no, not again. There's been certainly a suggestion by a very, very small number of people, it has to be said, that I want Graham Potter out, right? And I can't do anything about that. I can't do anything if what I say is perceived in a different way in which I'm saying it. I can only say that I'm reviewing the Newcastle game. I can only say that I want him here next season. I can only say that he's got a tough job on his hands. I can only say that I appreciate that he's fixed the defence so many times. If somebody wants to construe that and take my comments after the Newcastle game and then reframe them as me wanting Graham Potter out, there's nothing I can do about that. It's certainly not what I'm saying. But I made a pledge to you fine folk who subscribe to this channel to speak my mind. I'm going to continue to do so because, having said everything I just have, I wasn't particularly happy with something Graham Potter said, actually, and talking about sort of reframing. He was sort of guilty of a little bit of that himself. I've got my notes behind me on the screen. After the game against Newcastle, he received some criticism, and I felt rightly so. For all the reasons I've outlined in the last few days, I don't really see here's what I don't get. If we want to hoof the ball up the pitch, which is basically what we were doing, hoofing the ball up the pitch for, how big's Dan Burn? 6'6", something like that? For Dan Burn to basically lean over Jared Bowen and do that. Why are we passing back to the goalkeeper to do it? I don't get it. Why, Cresswell passes it back to the goalkeeper, he hoofs it back. Kilman passes it back to the goalkeeper, he hoofs it up. You know, a sort of hopeless punt upfield. If that's the tactic, why isn't Cresswell doing or Kilman? Surely either of which would have a more accurate hoof up the pitch. Anyway, I think he came under criticism for that, his tactics there. I think he's rightly come under scrutiny for. He's had 8 games in charge now, and he's averaging 2 shots on target a game, lowest in the Premier League. I think it's a fair reason to ask a question. I think that can prompt a question from a journalist, maybe. And I think it's also fair when we only play with 2 attackers, and particularly when you've chased a striker who, look, Evan Ferguson was never a £100 million player, but let's say, I think it'd be fair to say that Brighton wanted £50 million for him or whatever. We've got what some would consider to be a £50 million striker. He's not playing him. So I think when you're looking completely insipid, when you're looking like you're not threatening the opposition, then questions are going to be asked, right? Which is basically the questions are, what's the tactical plan here? Why are you playing so many defensive-minded players? Why these are the sort of questions that he was asked. I didn't really like the way he answered. Basically, he got triggered a little bit. He got a little bit sensitive over some questions that were asked to him. And this is answered. I apologise if things aren't happening quicker than we want them to. But I think you'll see the players give everything. The commitment is there. Well, hold on a minute. Well, first of all, he was a little bit spiky. I apologise. Well, you know, it was very much, well, I'm sorry if it's not quite how you like it. And then he went on to say, but, you know, how dare you criticise the commitment of the players? It was a reframing. Okay, it was at worst it was a reframing. At best it was a misinterpretation. There was never any questioning of the players' commitment. There wasn't any. Anybody that saw Edson Alvarez running around on that pitch couldn't criticise his commitment. It wasn't called into question. I mean, at one point he wanted to kill Bruno Guimaraes. He really did. He was fully committed. The commitment wasn't the problem, nor was it the question that Graham Potter was being asked. If we wanted to use Alvarez's example, why did you ask that guy to unlock a defence? Why him? Why him rather than an attacking midfield? I think this is a relevant question, pertinent question. Tell us, Graham, moving forward, as you start to look towards next season, why did you decide to do that rather than Paqueta, rather than Soler, who are both better at it? Why did you maybe not bench him and put a striker up there and maybe launch it long to the big fella? What's Ferguson, 6'4"? That's a question. No, it's not about commitment. But, I'll just say it again. But I think you see the players' commitment, they give everything. The commitment is there. Yeah, again, not called into question. I wouldn't call into question Thomas Souček's commitment. Who the hell would? There's nothing there to criticise in terms of commitment. He gives everything, literally blood, sweat and tears, right? No problem there. But, well, if you're a patron, you already know this because we discussed it over on Patreon. Little cheeky plug there. Links in the description below. 7-day free trial if you fancy it. He made 8 successful passes. 8 successful passes. So again, I think that's a pertinent question to say, well, if is the reason, here's a question, is the reason you're hoofing it long and using Areola who can't really kick to basically bypass the midfield, is that because you know the midfield can't pass? If that's a yes, then why have you played 2 players there that are not going to be able to pass through? Why have you deployed a system which is going to basically make your captain really frustrated? They were desperate. They were absolutely desperate at the end. And I just thought he was really touchy for these, what I thought were relevant questions being asked. And I think there were... There's no massive big picture here. These are just concerns. It's not anyone saying he should be sacked or anything like that. I am of the belief we can't keep changing managers all the time. We're going to have to stick with one for a while, and it's going to be him, right? But once you've wedded yourself to that idea, once you've accepted that's going to happen, once you've accepted that Graham Potter's been picked, well, okay, mate, when are we going to start making these transitions to something a little bit different? Because I would openly tell him, that ain't going to... You will not last long at West Ham doing that. I think he knows it. And I wouldn't try and reframe that and pretend that he wouldn't understand that. He will understand. He's an intelligent man. He will understand that he can't do that. So that would indicate it's a temporary measure, right? What we're doing. 2 attackers hoofing it long, temporary measure. Maybe you would say, well, it worked against Arsenal, it worked against Leicester. Okay. And by the way, I think we might see something different. Yeah, you have to. I think we might well stand a chance of winning against Everton. West Ham have been too easily written off. We got some good players. I wouldn't say we're a good team, but we got some good players. There's no doubt about that at all. But I do think these are relevant questions, and I think it would be wise to ask him. Okay, well, bear in mind that's probably not going to fly long term. You've got nothing to rescue. You don't need to put 8 blockers in, basically. And I do understand we attacked well at the start of each half, but you're still asking defensive players to attack well. It's easier for attackers to do it, right? Round pegs in round holes. And I think they're relatively balanced questions. When are we going to start transitioning towards that? I just didn't like the fact it was reframed into, well, hold on a second, we work tirelessly. We know, mate. We know. They're imaginary accusations. I didn't see anyone saying it. Honestly, I didn't see it. I thought there was times during the game when Newcastle out-scrapped us physically, but I didn't. Did you see how many clearances Kilman did? He really, really tried. He really did. Mavropanos, he's a bit clumsy and sometimes it can be a bit useless, but he really tries. I think most of the players tried. Most people say that. Kudus worked his arse off. Jared Bowen came back and made 3 tackles in our half. He was trying. Everyone was trying. Start imagining that a question. It's almost like he imagined the question differently so as he could take offence at it. But the thing I think I didn't like about it was he said, well, hold on, my players have got commitments. Well, to be fair, mate, the criticism, the questions were to you. They're about your tactics. They weren't about the players. Have you ever seen it when players come on? Mourinho was brilliant at this. I know he's not everyone's cup of tea, and I certainly don't want him to be manager of West Ham. But when people criticised his players, he would turn the attention onto him, and he would make the story about him. This was the reverse. This was about Potter, and he turned it into about the players. Now, granted, he didn't lay the blame at the players. He said, almost like, how dare you? How dare you say that about my players? There's nothing being said, mate. There's nothing being said. Look, we're not asking for much, I don't think, as fans. We've had to... it's going to sound really entitled, and I think any non-West Ham fan listening to this think, hold on a second, mate, you won a trophy, David Moyes, blah, blah, blah. But for the last season with David Moyes, we had to suffer some really crap football, right? And there were a lot of times, not so much against the big teams, there were a lot of times when, even against the small teams, Sheffield United last season was a prime example, where we showed no ambition to win the game. And that happened a lot. And you sort of don't mind it if you're going to go to Anfield and try and nick a point. But when you are there comes a point where you have to face a level of team and then go for it. And that you never felt that really happened. And I think with that in mind, our tolerance levels are probably a little bit lower than maybe some other clubs. And as I often say, we have different parameters. We've basically, the club have asked us fans to double the fan base. Now, West Ham have got fans all over the world, don't get me wrong, but a match-going fan base from 34,000 to 66,000, right? If you're going to do that, you've got to offer some form of product. And that's all it is. And I think there's just a question to ask Potter, what's going on here? Is it not fair enough to say, why are you not using the striker, mate? Why are we doing this? Why are we asking this goalkeeper to hoof it longer, can't hoof it longer, and so on and so forth? Why are we playing? Why have we no creativity? And why is it so slow? I've read a few comments saying Potter could do nothing else. That's not true. It's just not true. There's no context to it. There's no nuance to that. He could take one of those midfielders out and put Paqueta in there, or Soler in there. That would be a little bit more creative. He could have taken one of those midfielders out and put the striker in there and drop Kudus back to play the number 10, right? Maybe do something like that. It doesn't have to be that slow. He could have put Guilherme on it. There's a number of things he could have done. I don't like the argument that the team that Potter put out, well, he's played the same team for the last 3 games, which probably explains why he did it, right? And if he'd have just said that, he could have said that. I wouldn't even be talking about this now. If he'd have just said, look, we won the previous 2 games, so I thought we'd do it again. Looks like I'll have to change things around next time, or whatever. But he didn't. He was very defensive. My player's commitment is beyond question. Those weren't his words. I made it sound a bit more flowery, but he did. There were things he could do, and he chose not to do them. And I think that's why I'm asking why. Why is that? I would like to know his reasoning, because it wasn't the only thing he could have done. Is it the only way he feels he can win a game? If that's the case, then we know it tells us a lot about Carlos Soler. We know he's going back. I suspect he's going back to Paris Saint-Germain anyway. Maybe it's a case that Lucas Paqueta is so distracted by his hearing next week that he didn't feel that he could play. I thought he tried to make things happen when he came on. Maybe it was a fitness, but we don't know because none of that was offered up. And he didn't say, ideally, we'd like to get more creativity in the midfield. Just things happen against us. We'll certainly be looking to do that. I'm not suggesting he's the answer to everything. Look, if George Earthy, who got an assist a couple of nights ago, if he was still at West Ham, he'd surely be in, right? That would be the case. But the academy got some good young players. I've not seen him play for a little while, but Dan Rigger is an incredible creative talent. We got him from Man City. A lot of clubs want to take him off West Ham. Have him on there. Give him a go. Or is it the fact of you can't do it, you won't do it? I don't understand. But all he had to do was say that, rather than saying, well, I apologise if it's not happening as quickly as we'd like. I hope not. I hope that's not the case. I hope he's not getting worn down by it already. Always notice when some managers, they just have enough sometimes, don't they? So I always make the point with Moyes. Maybe it's West Ham. Listen, don't get me wrong. Potter is not to blame for this stuff. It was the squad put together beforehand. It is, I think, it's probably 3 or 4 years of disjointed buying without a clear philosophy. But as I say, I don't think that Potter has only been left with functional players and only 2 attacking players. That was his choice. That with Paqueta, with Guilherme, with Evan Ferguson on the bench, with Soler. That was his choice. That was his choice to play 2 attackers. In actual fact, he had. You would say he had six in terms of the team and what was on the bench. He had 6 attack-minded players. We chose to play 2 of them. So I don't know why he's getting so spiky about the criticism. And certainly don't like that he's turning it on that... He wasn't saying fans are criticising it. Let's be fair to him. He wasn't saying fans are questioning it, the player's commitment. But whatever, the journalist, the line of questioning was questioning the player's commitment. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. Anyway, like I say, I suspect, because the one good thing about people that are spiky, and I think he's spiky, I think he's a nice guy and he's an intelligent guy and I like what I see, but he's spiky when he gets criticised. You've seen that. And the thing about people like that, I think they tend to have a bit of a reaction, have a bit of a response. And I think his reaction may well be, right, I'll show you. He changed things after Brentford. Because against Brentford didn't work. That didn't work against Newcastle. That did not work. And I suspect he'll change it again. And I hope he does. Because I don't think there's any big picture of loads of people want him out or people are overly moaning. But he's not been here 2 games. He has been here 8. And during those, we've stopped creating. We've won a couple of games. Don't get me wrong, we've won back-to-back games. Good. But it's not like we've had 8 games and we've been undefeated. So what you're moaning about, don't moan about the tactics and the rest of it. I think we just want to see what's going to happen going forward.